You know that feeling. You sit down to make a decision, an important one, and your brain just will not cooperate. There are 17 other things competing for the same space. The inbox, the meeting you just left, the conversation you need to have, the deadline that is closer than it should be. And instead of thinking clearly, you are just spinning. Not because you are not smart enough, not because you do not care, but because the brain was never designed to hold this much at once and still perform at its best. That is what we are getting into today. Not just what overwhelm is, but what it actually does to the brain, why it happens so consistently in high-performance environments, and what you can do about it right now. Because clarity is not a luxury. For a leader, for a team, for anyone trying to make good decisions under pressure, clarity is the whole game. Here is what is actually happening when the brain feels full. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for strategic thinking, rational decision-making, emotional regulation, and creativity, has a finite working capacity. It is extraordinary, but it is not unlimited. When too many inputs are competing for its attention simultaneously, it does not just slow down. It starts making shortcuts. It defaults to familiar patterns. It reaches for the easiest answer rather than the right one. And in a corporate environment where the quality of decisions directly determines the quality of outcomes, that is not a small problem. That is the problem. What most people call overwhelm is really the nervous system signaling that it has taken on more than it can process without a reset. And the instinctive response to push harder, to work longer, to add more caffeine and more hours is the exact opposite of what the biology is asking for. The brain does not need more input. It needs less. It needs space, not eventually. Now, here is something worth sitting with. The mind, when left unmanaged, becomes a generator of problems, not solutions, problems. It takes a situation that is genuinely manageable and runs it through every worst-case scenario it can construct. Every past experience that felt similar, every future consequence it can imagine. And by the time it is done, what started as a challenge has become a crisis, not in reality, but in the mind. And the body responds to that perceived crisis exactly as it would to a real one. Cortisol rises. The sympathetic nervous system activates. The prefrontal cortex, the very part you need most, begins to go offline. And now you are trying to think your way through complexity with the least capable version of your own brain. This is not a character flaw. This is biology, and understanding it changes everything. The single most powerful thing you can do when the brain feels full is the thing that feels the most counterintuitive. Give the nervous system 60 seconds of something that is not demand, a breath, a walk to the window, a moment of stillness where you are not trying to solve anything. Because in that pause, something remarkable happens. The parasympathetic nervous system begins to engage. Cortisol starts to drop. Blood flow returns to the prefrontal cortex. And the brain, the real, capable, creative version of it, starts to come back online. This is not a productivity hack. This is how the brain actually works. And the leaders who understand this, who have built the discipline to pause before they push, consistently outperform the ones who confuse busyness with effectiveness. The next thing is getting what is in your head out of your head. The brain is a processing system, not a storage system. When we try to hold everything in working memory simultaneously, every task, every concern, every open loop, we are using cognitive resources for storage that were designed for thinking. Writing things down is not just organization. It is a neurological act of release. The moment something is externalized, on paper, in a document, anywhere outside the skull, the brain stops allocating energy to holding it, and that freed up capacity goes straight back into the quality of your thinking. In a team context, this is why the best leaders are also the clearest communicators. They do not carry the weight of every open decision in their head. They externalize it. They name it. They give it a place. And in doing so, they model for the people around them that clarity is not something you wait to feel. It is something you create. The other piece that almost nobody talks about is the role of the body in cognitive clarity. The brain does not exist in isolation. It is part of a system. And when the body is dehydrated, sedentary, underfed, or sleep-deprived, the quality of thinking reflects that. regardless of how motivated or intelligent the person is. A 10-minute walk does not just clear the head metaphorically, it literally increases blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, stimulates the release of BDNF, which supports new neural connections, and shifts the neurochemical environment of the brain toward one that is more open, more creative, and more capable of seeing options that were invisible from behind a desk. This is why the 6 pillars, movement, nutrition, breath, hydration, sleep, and mindfulness, are not wellness concepts. They are performance infrastructure. The brain that is well rested, well fed, well hydrated, and regularly moved is a fundamentally different instrument to the one running on 4 hours of sleep and 3 coffees. And the decisions that come from those 2 brains are not comparable. And then there is the quality of the inner conversation. Because a lot of what fills the brain is not actual information. It is narrative. The story about what this situation means. The interpretation layered on top of the facts. The judgment about whether you are handling it well enough, moving fast enough, being enough. The suffering is rarely in the situation. It is in the story about the situation. And when you can separate those 2 things, when you can look at what is actually happening versus what you are telling yourself about what is happening, the brain immediately has less to carry. Because half of what felt overwhelming was not real. It was constructed. That distinction is one of the most freeing things a person can learn. And it is learnable. It is not reserved for people who meditate for hours or have done years of inner work. It is available in any moment to anyone willing to pause long enough to ask, what is actually true here? And what am I adding to it? Clarity is not the absence of complexity. It is the ability to move through complexity without being consumed by it. And that ability is built through the body, through the breath, through the quality of the inner dialogue, and through the discipline of creating space before the brain reaches its limit rather than after. Your team does not need to think less. They need to think better. And thinking better starts with understanding what thinking actually requires.